Hello, I am professional film critic Sean Patrick, and this show is My Life as a Critic. And it's me looking back at my old reviews, critiquing myself, and then critiquing the movie again from a new, hopefully more mature perspective. I've been doing this for 20 years now, and there's a lot of stuff that I've written about a lot of different movies. And so I like to pick them at random and watch them again and see how my opinions have changed, or if my perspective on life has changed in a way that'll affect the way I see a particular film. This time I'm looking at the movie No Country for Old Men, which is one of my all-time favorites from the Coen brothers, who are the filmmakers that I think I admire more than any others. The Big Lebowski is my all-time favorite film. It has been for over a decade now. I just love that film. I've seen it so many times. I can repeat all the dialogue. I find almost every time something new that I admire about the movie. And it's based entirely on the intricacy of their plotting and the intricacy of their dialogue. They are very specific in the way that they use dialogue and image, so that everything that they do essentially has a payoff later. As an example, in The Big Lebowski, you see early on the dude, when he's in the grocery store, he hears George Bush talking about this aggression will not stand. He was talking, of course, about Kuwait, but the dude, hearing that, hears the word aggression, and then takes that and uses it later when he's talking to Walter and Donnie about the rug pissers. He talks about how this aggression will not stand. It's as if in scene after scene, the dude is inventing himself based on things that other people said to him, whether it's Walter or The Big Lebowski or George H.W. Bush in that scene. It's as if he takes pieces of things that he hears and invents himself along the way to essentially reflect the kind of emotions he feels like he's supposed to have that he doesn't really have, because everything for the dude is more moment to moment. So Walter expects him to be angry about the rug, and he doesn't quite know how to express anger. He knows how to express frustration and hurt, but anger and is something that he's seen Walter have, but it's not something that the dude is capable of. So he thinks of that phrase. He thinks back to hearing what George Bush said: "This aggression will not stand," and he finds it contextually right and emotionally correct, and so he uses it in that scene. And that is such a smart way to build a comic character, in that watching this guy sort of invent himself and realizing you're seeing that on the screen is so fascinating. It's one of the many reasons why I find The Big Lebowski so fascinating, and why it's my favorite film of all time. No Country for Old Men, it's been since 2007 since I saw it. Seeing it was an experience, and not an experience that I really wanted to revisit, because it is a hard watch, that's for sure. It's a deep and dark and dramatic and suspenseful film that it was very gripping. So let's get to my review that I wrote back in, this was November of 2007. I was writing for a website called smart-popcorn.com, which no longer exists, but you can find it on the Internet Archive, archive.org, and if you search smart-popcorn, you can actually find a bunch of my old reviews if you want to. This was when I was an amateur critic. I didn't have a editor, so some of this could be embarrassingly mixed up, but hopefully I was, at the very least, when I was a younger critic, before I had professional accreditation and I was working with people who could make me better, I hopefully, at the very least, most of the time I usually had at least a good idea, if not the best way of expressing that idea. So with that, here is my original review of No Country for Old Men. The Big Lebowski is my favorite movie of all time. I've seen it dozens of times, traded lines with friends and strangers, and marveled at the number of nuances I find in it every time I watch it. Lebowski was the product of the fertile minds of the Coen brothers, who used the frame of classic noir detective stories to twist dialogue and convention into the highest form of comedy. The Coens' new film, No Country for Old Men, could not be more different from The Big Lebowski. Faithfully adapting the dark, violent work of Cormac McCarthy, the Coens depart with almost all of their past and work to bring McCarthy's vision to the screen. Everything down to the music, usually provided by Coen's guy Carter Burwell, is jettisoned in order to bring McCarthy's earthy Texas prose to the screen. It sounds risky, but it works. No Country for Old Men is arguably the best film of 2007. A drug deal gone bad leads an average man, Llewellyn Wells. It's actually Llewellyn Moss, but Wells was the Woody Harrelson character, so there's mistake number one. Leads Llewellyn Moss to a stunning discovery: a dead man carrying a satchel holding over $2.5 million. While dollar signs flash in Llewellyn's mind, the man whose money has gone missing has already dispatched a man to recover it. That man is Anton Chigurh, a psychotic, unrelenting killer who will not stop until the job is finished, no matter how many people he has to kill. Observing things from a few steps behind is County Sheriff Ed Tom Bell. The drug deal happened in his jurisdiction, and Wells, being one of his citizens, makes this a case he's required to follow. As the bodies pile up and Chigurh comes closer to Moss, Bell becomes more and more disturbed by the decline of basic humanity in his corner of the world. Directed and adapted by the Coen brothers from the novel of the same name by Cormac McCarthy, No Country for Old Men is a meditative, hypnotic film experience. So sucked in by this unfolding drama and these extraordinary characters, this is the kind of film that haunts you on your way out of the theater. Now, see, that's terrible. That's just awful. Because I didn't use any, way to tell you, to say that you are the one who gets so sucked in by this unfolding drama, these extraordinary characters, the kind of film that haunts you on your way home. I mean, there's a much simpler way to say that, and I wish I would have reread that a few more times before writing it down. Try describing the feelings afterward and a tingle in your spine will no doubt accompany your recollection. Again, another overly complicated sentence on my part. Wow. No Country for Old Men is a very unique adventure for the Coen brothers. Known for dialogue that twists and turns and bobs and weaves like non-sequitur poetry, the Coens surrender much of their own writing to adapting almost word for word the straightforward, manly dialogue of Cormac McCarthy. Readers of No Country for Old Men will recognize whole passages of dialogue from the book in the movie. The Coen changes to McCarthy's work are minimal. They have removed Ed Tom's narration, dropping some of the old sheriff's rambling observations about the rotting of humanity into the dialogue of the film. They have added a few scenes to flesh out areas of Ed Tom's narration, but otherwise whole scenes are translated directly from McCarthy's text. The Coen brothers' work has always been open to philosophical observation. No Country for Old Men may be their most open to interpretation work yet. McCarthy's book is open to much speculation about its meaning, but it breaks down to a rather elementary discussion of McCarthy's feelings about the breakdown of society. The Coens are more philosophical. Yes, that discussion about where the world is heading is there, but there is something more in the visual subtext of No Country for Old Men that is open to a wide amount of explanation. Take an especially close look at Anton Chigurh. Where McCarthy never bothered giving a physical description of Chigurh, the Coens were quite specific with what they wanted. Casting Javier Bardem, a Spaniard with a swarthy, almost Mediterranean look, they left open to much speculation just who Chigurh might work for. Then there is the hair, a ludicrous 70s throwback that I feel looks somewhat reminiscent of the top of the Grim Reaper's robe. Wielding a shotgun instead of a sickle, Chigurh kills indiscriminately, yet pauses on more than one occasion to offer his quarry a game of chance, a la Bergman's interpretation of the Reaper in The Seventh Seal. No chess game, but a more disturbing and fateful coin flip. The Coen's version of the character of Death is an equally terrifying character. As played by Javier Bardem, Chigurh is an unceasingly calm and terrifying figure. The performance is so brilliantly haunting that Chigurh comes home with you after the film in ways only classic horror film villains have in the past. No Country for Old Men is arguably the best film of 2007, one of the finest works in the long, illustrious career of the Coen brothers, and easily their most unique. It's strange to see the Coens interpret someone else's work. What's more extraordinary is how well they adapt someone else's work. The Coens transfer Cormac McCarthy directly to the screen in ways that few writers ever could imagine. Slavishly faithful to McCarthy's words, the Coens must have writers like Stephen King falling all over themselves to get interpreted. It's a rare and exceptional thing for filmmakers to show a writer so much respect. That is just one of many extraordinary things about No Country for Old Men. Boy, that's a terrible review. I mean, there's a couple of ideas in there and things worth exploring that I touch upon a little bit, but oh man. I mean, just lots of way too many words or bad ideas. I mean, the Stephen King thing, I don't know what that was about. I don't know why I included that. Uh, I and I don't even know where to begin, but I gotta be. I don't know. I gotta do better than that, man. And that was 881 words. I could have done all that in probably 500 words, and probably come out a lot better than I did in terms of the actual review. Oh man. That said, I do love the movie. I just wish I were smarter in talking about it. Hopefully, when we come back after I actually watch the movie, which will be a couple hours for me, but only a couple seconds here for you, hopefully I can say something more articulate about No Country for Old Men. No Country for Old Men is still as unique and hypnotic as it always was. The film is such a ridiculous suspense machine. I mean, you are on edge from the very beginning, and yet there's also, without the music of Carter Burwell to sort of tell you how to feel, you're also left sort of listless at times, and you kind of fall into the movie's pattern a little bit easier. It's a much slower build without music telling you how much you should be afraid for the characters. The lack of music, that quiet in the film, is so important to creating this atmosphere of dread that makes this film so unique and so terrifying in so many ways. So let's tackle some of the things I said in my review. Obviously, I said he carried a shotgun, and he does. Chigurh does carry a shotgun, but it's the cowpuncher that really stands out above everything. That cowpuncher is a terrifying weapon, and when he uses it on this random guy whose car he just wants to take. It is a scene of stunning horror that really puts you it really turns your stomach, and that is quite a remarkable scene. But Chigurh is a really remarkable character. In my review, I talked about him as a sort of a figure not unlike the character of Death from Bergman's Seventh Seal. That was mostly me being pretentious, but it's also. I mean, I can kind of see it too when I watch it again, because that weird shock of hair that does kind of look a little bit like Death's hood, and just that unceasing march of Chigurh toward his victim, and the lives that he takes along the way, the lives that are seemingly random, and yet you have that gas station attendant where he pulls out the coin, and he's going to decide whether or not he's going to kill this man based on the coin toss. Which again is definitely, unquestionably reminiscent, at the very least, if not intended, reminiscent of the chess match between the Knight and Death in Seventh Seal. The inevitability of death. That man's still going to die at some point, but will it be in this moment, or will it be at some other moment in his life? Death is unceasing. It is coming for everyone, and eventually it will get everybody, including Llewellyn Moss, including his wife, including any number of people who encounter Chigurh, because Chigurh is a function of murder. He is a machine of death. He is seemingly created to kill, and he has no emotions seemingly about it. He is an instrument of fate. He doesn't do this necessarily for the money. He doesn't do this because he enjoys it. He seems to have been created in some way to kill. We don't know anything about his backstory. We don't know where he came from, how he grew up, how he came to be this seemingly psychotic killer. We know nothing about Chigurh other than when people see him, they die. That's what we know. And that's pretty much what you know about the character of Death. If you see Death in his long robe with his sickle and that hood, you're going to die. That's why he's there, and he's not going away. You can placate him. You can placate Death for decades or a day, but Death is always coming, and that's kind of what this movie is about. And when you think about the title, No Country for Old Men, it's what do you do with your life once you get to a point in your life where pretty much everything else is done. Ed Tom Bell, the Tommy Lee Jones character, eventually does retire based off of having seen so much death and so much horror and not finding God anywhere in this and being unable to reconcile the absence of good around him. He winds up in the end retired, and even his wife doesn't really have much use for him. Even as she loves him, she clearly seems to be love there. She doesn't have time for him. She's not retired. She's got things to do. His life is over, and he's essentially just sitting there waiting for Chigurh to show up in some way. Now, obviously, Chigurh's not coming for him, at least not in the context of the film, but Death is coming for him at some point, because what else is left? At least from his perspective, and seemingly from the film's perspective. The story he tells at the end about his dream of his father riding ahead to light a fire, I mean, that's very reminiscent of the idea of going toward the light once you're in the coma, or once you've seemingly come to the end of life. That notion of the afterlife, of walking towards a big bright light at the end and seeing members of your family waiting for you. It's essentially what Tommy Lee Jones says at the very end of the movie, is he was moving toward the light that his father was lighting ahead of him. His father, of course, himself, I'm not sure. I believe that was his father in the previous scene, where he talked about his uncle being killed on the porch by seemingly at random as a young sheriff. His grandfather being killed, that is. That scene, I believe he was talking to his father in that scene, and his father obviously having been shot himself and survived, but now alone in this house with all these cats. I mean, he's riding ahead, and once he lights the light, that's basically his death. And then Tommy Lee Jones's character riding after him, his death is soon to come as well. They're both old men who've seen too much and don't see much beyond. And that is really a depressing notion. But at the same time, the way that Tommy Lee Jones delivers these lines and delivers these monologues is so compelling and so beautiful that he gives it a sort of, he doesn't soften the blow of it, but he does compel you with it. And it's I'm not even sure what it is about it that moved me so much, because it is, again, when you get down to it, it's kind of depressing. Well, not kind of, it's pretty depressing, but it's also kind of beautiful and poetic. And that is, I guess that's kind of a hallmark of Cormac McCarthy, whose work can tend towards being kind of oppressive and oppressively sad. And that's certainly what those moments are with Tommy Lee Jones. Throughout the film, he seems to be growing ever more oppressed by the world with what he's seen, the horrors that he's witnessed. Turning our attention to Llewellyn Moss, Josh Brolin, it's a great performance. It's filled with kind of a manly sort of odd comedy where his manhood is almost kind of humorous. The way he acts, once he gets the money and he takes it home, and then in deciding to go back to take water to that one last man who wasn't quite dead, who was asking for water. If he doesn't do that, who knows what happens? But that scene has to happen for the rest of the plot to take place. The way he regards Chigurh, the way he regards the Woody Harrelson character, this almost flippant worldview of his that eventually leads to his downfall, is a weird sort of comedy that is also just as the sadness of Tommy Lee Jones or the horror of Chigurh are compelling. The the odd sort of humor of the Josh Brolin character really does stand out. And look at the ways that the film combines those elements of life, the scary, the frightening aspect of death, the depressing aspect of a life seemingly coming to an end, and the odd comedy of this man who's set himself on this path of danger. It's weirdly compelling and also oddly humorous. The way he sort of flippantly looks at life and death, the way he stares death in the face and laughs, essentially. And then there's the fact that it's not even Chigurh that kills him in the end. It's the Mexicans that come for the money and probably end up with the money. The money doesn't really mean anything in the end. Moss didn't get to use it. Chigurh, I don't know what Chigurh was even planning on doing with it. He was set upon this by the Stephen Root character, but he doesn't seem particularly interested in collecting any money. He seems to want to get the money for, I guess, because that was the mission that he was put upon. Which, again, returns you to the idea of Chigurh as a metaphoric character. Because what is his motivation? If he doesn't necessarily even want the money, why is he here? What is he to do? He's here because the world seems to require him in this moment, or some fate, the devil, something has put him in this moment where he needs to be there, and he needs to end these particular lives, as if he were being informed by some higher power that this is the world, this is his function in the world. That is what's unique and fascinating about the Chigurh character. The money doesn't, he even as much as he is after the money, it doesn't seem to mean all that much to him, as much as killing does. Because even after the money is out of the equation, he still goes to kill Moss's wife, which just kind of is a way of telling you about that character. Then, of course, the car wreck at the end that he's in, when he is T-boned by another vehicle and is badly injured, his only concern is just to walk away from it. It doesn't even have anything. He's going to leave. He can leave behind everything that he has. He doesn't care about getting money. He just wants to get out of there and continue his mission, because death is inexorable. You can't stop it. You can't stop death even with, when you try and kill it. I think that's the fact that he's just so unstoppable is yet another of the ways in which he acts as a metaphor, in the same way that the character of Death in Seventh Seal was a metaphor, a stand-in for fate, a stand-in for God, a stand-in for death. Death brought to your eyes so you can actually see it. That is what the character was in Seventh Seal, and that's kind of what Chigurh is in No Country for Old Men. You would imagine if this film had gone on another few minutes, maybe he would have ended up on the path of Ed Tom Bell or his father, or eventually try with the idea that maybe he's trying to track down the money, but also because this is his function in the world. So that is my take on No Country for Old Men. I wish my review of the film that I wrote in 2007 had been much better. There's a lot of unexplored ideas. There's a lot of really terrible paragraphs in that one, even as I was writing about a movie that I really liked. But, hopefully along the way I can... But thankfully I think I've learned a lot more, and I've become better as a film critic. But that was 9 years ago that I was, putting up such relatively amateur work. So there you go. No Country for Old Men, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of My Life as a Critic. If you like the show, please comment and let me know, and share it with others. Thank you.